It was a mistake to think back, of course, because both of them had changed so much. The Lord of Death had burst free of his old bounds, becoming grotesque and monstrous. He wore a human form only in outline now. His skinny body inhabited a ramshackle armor of corrosion and decay, a gaggle of loosely held panels and moldy fabric, seemingly liable to fall apart at any moment. The air around him was acrid, suffused with a foulness that turned the stomach and made it hard to breathe. He was ruined, and yet exalted, crippled, yet stronger than he had ever been. So the old encounter meant little. Then, it had been a matter of speed against intractability, and either approach could have emerged victorious. Now, though, the parameters had changed. Mortarion's brute strength had grown obscenely. The warp coursed thickly through his veins, pulsing under heavily mutated skin. Whenever he moved, reality flexed around him, recoiling at the violation of natural law. His great blade displayed reflections of the hell realm beyond, its rotting gardens, its tormented flesh, its fertile pain fields. What did he, the Khan, have to set against all of that? The old prowess with a blade, some fine armor, the residue of that famed quickness. Not enough. He had his hatred, though. That was different from before. On Prospero, the discourse between them had been regretful as much as anything. Both of them disappointed at what was being thrown away by the other. Now, his hatred was as infinite as the void. Too many had died at Catullus for it to be any other way. His warriors, his ships, his counselors, all swallowed up by the monster before him, all owing their deaths to the single soul. The Khan had that. He had his rage, deep as the world's core, fueling every strike and swipe of the great Tao blade. He had the keen edge of vengeance to propel his limbs, to find the chink that could wound this horrific amalgam of post-human and yaksha, to keep going against the impossible. They crashed together then, cracking the stone underfoot as they braced against it. The white tiger snared itself on silence, releasing an explosion of mingled forces, and they both pushed against the other, testing strength and poise, feeling the harmonics in their weapons and gauging what it meant for the strength of their bearers. The Khan fell back first. They exchanged more blows, rapid, heavier and faster. All around them the roar of broader combat filtered up from the decks below, a chorus of screams and explosions that could not be filtered out. The strikes accelerated, ramping up swiftly until the blows were exceptional in their heft and precision. Mortarion had speeded up, his old stolidity replaced by a phase-shifting, demonic velocity. The whistling arcs of his scythe hissed with unearthly voices, wounding the atmosphere itself, even as the Khan ducked away from its lacerating edge. When that warp-forged steel connected, the impact was bone-breaking, mind-jarring, a collision of dimensions as much as solid matter. I expected you to dance, the Deathlord grunted, hammering the Khan back further. Lost your footing, as well as your judgment. The Khan was already breathing heavily. The going was as hard as expected. Harder, maybe. There had never been any illusions. He worked his blade rapidly, its edge losing definition as the point whirled faster than thought. The scythe met it, in explosions of plasma and ceramite shards, swinging heavily, crackling with hissed imprecations of its half-formed demonic choir. "You are already defeated," the Khan told him, breathily. "You have become what you hated." Mortarion snorted. "Some hatreds were never worth pursuing." "Tell yourself that, if it helps." The acceleration continued. The blows became denser than true mortal frames could ever have propelled. The combatants smashed in close, then reeled away into one of the gallery's columns. The masonry cracked apart, driven into disintegrating dust clouds as the Primarchs crunched their way clean through it. The Khan's armor took its first transverse slash, ripping the finery from shoulder to waist. Blood followed the path of the strike, splattering against the deck in black pools. They were alone now. They had entered a world of exclusivity, a level of combat that no other being, Xenos or human, could hope to match. Just to witness it, to try to follow it, was to invite a kind of madness. The Primarchs kept themselves tightly under control almost all the time, wearing the trappings of mortality over their true natures. When they cast that off, when they unlocked their inner selves, the result was difficult even to watch, let alone intervene in. "Time has been cruel, 𝗟𝗶𝗃," Mortarion said, still calm, still fighting within himself, cracking the Khan away yet again, smacking the gold chasing from his helm and rocking his head back. "You are not what you were." "I am what I always was," the Khan snarled, driving back expertly against the flurry of hideously perfect blows and raking plague sensors free of their chains. "Weak. Loyal. Same thing." The two of them barreled into the gallery's external wall, hammering at one another so fiercely that the entire section collapsed as if torpedoed. They swirled and dueled through the tumbling rubble, then out into the exposed night air, completely absorbed now in their own private contest. The rest of the planet, the rest of existence, might as well have slipped away, shamefaced at the volume of physical brutality unleashed on its surface. But that violence only ratcheted up. Every second, ticking over, more. Mortarion nearly took the Khan's head clean off with a vicious diagonal swipe. Silence's curved tip carved a 3-foot deep trench into the deck. When pulled out again, it ripped up a whole clump of static wreathed rockcrete. The Khan shouldered through the barrage to land a spiteful cut on the Death Lord's leading thigh, stripping the pox-riddled armor clean from the flesh and taking his first blood, before being hammered back. They were out in the open by then, lashing and swiping across one of the big landing stages, a kilometer across and 1,200 meters up. Above them, the storm raged, coruscating with green lightning that snapped down the high reaches of the spaceport. Below them, the bulk of the immense fortress spread out in a panoply of jumbled stages and terraces. Every inch of it was fought over now, a million points of light exposing white scars and death guard at one another's throats. It was as if the entire battle had found its apex, its distilled expression, so that all those thousands and thousands of individual duels created their gestalt combination right at the summit of the decaying pile. Something to gawp and wonder at, even as the blood foamed busily into the gutters.
This isn't about revenge for me,
said Mortarion, his rasping voice still contained.
You're just in the way now. You understand that?
The Khan laughed bloodily, spitting out shattered teeth. Not how I see it, brother, he hissed. I'm here for you. Nothing else. Mortarion backhanded him, cracking a savage hit into the Khan's throat, before following up with a two-handed thrust of the scythe.
Indulgent. But then, you always were.
Another smack against the helm, a discharge of virulent nerve gas as the edge bit, the destruction of the Khan's right pauldron, making him stagger.
I led my legion as I saw fit,
the Khan snarled.
You might have tried the same.
The white tiger flashed, going for the jangling cables at Mortarion's neck, but it was swatted aside.
I led the Death Guard before you were even found.
The Khan held his ground against the onslaught, muscles screaming as they propelled his blade into dazzling arcs. Sweat pooled around his burning skin, mingling with blood now.
Not sure your first captain would agree.
That unleashed the flood. Mortarion roared back at him, his gossamer wings rearing up as his mighty arms flailed, furious and devastating. He crunched and bludgeoned the Khan out across the face of the landing stage, wreathing him with plumes of poison, smashing the metal of his gauntlets, cracking his flanks with the shaft of his ether-snarled staff, before plunging the curved edge back round and up into his torso. To endure that at all, not to be completely swept away and broken into 1,000 pieces, took every scrap of skill and tenacity the Khan still possessed. By that point, he was fighting beyond anything he had ever achieved before, scraping the boundaries of the possible. And still, he was being battered, bruised, hammered, driven across the storm-racked port's edge like a churl being beaten by his lord. His head rang from the blows, clouded with blood puffs as his skull rattled in his helm. His right arm was fractured, his flank lacerated, his cheek shattered. Silence swung around him like the wheeling stars, its length crackling with vicious energies, both faster than the warp snarl, and heavier than a star's heart.
You know nothing,
Mortarion snarled, rearing up again, his cloak whipping about him as the storm surge howled.
Nothing of sacrifice, nothing of denial. You were the spoiled child, whining about the need for structure as the rest of us built an empire.
Mortarion's eyes flared with a maddened green tinge. His visible face twisted into true rage now. He was elemental. He was apocalyptic. He was phenomenal. The Tempest shrieked around him, hurled into a vortex that amplified every killer strike, tearing up the ground they scored across, and sending its remnants slamming and blasting across the Khan's retreating form.
You were shown the nature of the galaxy, and you turned away?
Mortarion raged, slamming the scythe down, and nearly breaking the Khan's trailing leg in two.
I embraced it. I embraced the pain. I looked the god in the eye.
The tempest of Horus's wrath swirled overhead. Explosions kindled far below, creating constellations of plasma across the port's ruins. Further out, visible only to a Primarch's vision, the beleaguered inner palace burned, too far for any intervention now, Unholy voices whined in the superheated wind, goading, crowing, delighting.
And you ran!
Mortarion spat.
Always running too far away to matter. Principles unknown even to yourself.
The scythe swung again, even heavier now. Unstoppably fast, critically heavy, driving over the Khan's desperate attempt to block it, connecting with armor-cracking force and sending the Primarch skidding to his knees. More blows rained in, iron hard, exploding with the soul-eating spoil of the ether, smashing him down, lower, until he was on his back against the rockcrete, prone, ready for slaughter.
No running now.
The Khan's head snapped back, and blood sloshed down his neck. He had a brief glimpse of the skies above. The mottled, incarnadine clouds, hiding the monstrous fleets above, before Mortarion's profile loomed up to block it. And then, the dream came true, just as 𝗟𝗂𝗋 had described it to him. The Lord of Death, rising in darkness over a world of shadow, arms raised for the killing strike. Not everything is fated, the Khan had told him then.
It ends,
Mortarion said, his face a rictus of anger.
Here.
The Khan chuckled painfully under his shattered, lensless helm.
See, but I'm laughing now, brother.
He rasped, the thick blood in his throat making his words gurgle.
You should start to worry.
Greetings, one and all. If you enjoyed that, you can support me on Patreon, Redbubble, or with a channel membership. Or simply like, comment, and subscribe to catch any and all future DQVO videos. And as always, my thanks for watching.